Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'll be reviewing for you the In the Dark DLC for Lil Gator Game on the Nintendo Switch. I hope you'll forgive me for having kinda generic footage. It's mainly because there's no easy way to restart the DLC campaign, which I'll get to in a moment, but unfortunately you're just gonna have to watch me wandering around the cave trying to pick up the last remaining bits of cardboard. I got into Lil Gator Game pretty late. It came out in 2022, but I didn't actually play it and beat it until 2025, mainly because Playtonic, the publishers, made an announcement that the developers, Mega Wobble, were making an all-new DLC campaign which would take place in an entirely new area, and it would be the size of the main game. So I said, well, I guess that'll give me a chance to do some homework. So I made a review of Lil Gator Game, and I even had my editor at the time, Esabelle, give her thoughts on the game. So I do think that that video still holds up pretty well, except for the black borders around the screen. But basically the gist of it is that Lil Gator Game is about a bunch of children making a game that is based off of The Legend of Zelda. And so you get a lot of very child-friendly, imaginative takes on the Zelda franchise. For example, all of the monsters are made out of cardboard and don't fight back. You don't take any fall damage. There's really not a penalty for anything. Besides that, you will upgrade yourself over time to make getting around the island easier, like getting more bracelets so you can climb longer, or getting a shield so that you can shield surf, or a shirt so that you can glide like the paraglider. Unlike Breath of the Wild, the shirt doesn't use up any stamina. In the Dark starts out after you beat the main game. Once the credits have rolled, talk to Martin again, and then a new cutscene will play that opens up a new cave. And once you go through that cave, then you will enter this brand new cavern area where you'll meet a couple of other kids who have their way of wanting to play the game. And this basically boils down to they want to introduce a villain to this game. And your job is to play along and figure out how the two groups of kids can work together. Essentially, the premise is pretty much identical to the main games, as you still go around helping animals with their various problems in preparation for taking on the final battle. And I say a lot of that in quotation marks, because again, you're not in any real danger. The monsters are still made out of cardboard, you still don't get fall damage, and most of the evil stuff here is just children using their imagination on how to sound wicked. And the dialogue does, for the most part, feel pretty accurate to how children and teenagers would talk. It does feel like they tried really, really hard to sound sophisticated, but failed miserably, and that is part of the charm. I did end up taking quite a lot of snapshots for this game's dialogue. While I personally think it wasn't quite as funny or humorous as the main games, as that one was more on the nose about being a Zelda parody, whereas this one is more about expanding on the game itself, I still found myself having a pretty good time revisiting this environment. I really like the Breath of the Wild style controls of being able to shield surf and shirt glide, just like you could paraglide and shield surf in those games. And you get a couple of new abilities too. Every time you get a new weapon, it also comes with charms on them. And charms are basically like this game's version of the magic meter. You start out with a pickaxe, and you can use that to break down these rock walls. But when you swing in midair, it kind of gives you a twirling jump attack. And the more charms you have, the more you can chain together these jump attacks. You can also learn a spin attack, and the ability to hover in the air, which you're seeing throughout this footage. And it's really fun to pick up these new upgrades, because in the main game, pretty much all of your weapons and shields did the same thing. It was mainly just, oh hey, I prefer to wear a bucket instead of a detective's hat, or I would like to have a chessboard shield instead of a pot lid shield. But in this, it feels like your choices actually matter, because almost every piece of equipment does something different. You also get new clothing options too, which, just like the main game, don't do anything. But it's still nice that there's more stuff to unlock and more stuff to discover. Now, just in case you get tired of playing in the dark and you want to go back to the main game, or you want to take some of the new abilities you got from the cave, you can find a ladder on top of a waterfall and press A next to it to climb back to the main island. So if you were the type that was turned off by the 100% process, maybe the new items will make it easier for you. Unfortunately, my biggest problem with the original Lil Gator Game is still not addressed in the slightest here, and that's that the game has no map and no guidance. Sure, some of the characters will point you in the general direction of where you need to go, but for the most part, you kind of have to figure out your own way through the world. And I know the characters keep saying, it's an adventure, it's a quest, you have to make your own maps. But honestly, I just don't find that very fun, especially because the cave has not that much variety in its scenery. At least with the main game, you would get different islands, and then there would be like more trees on one part of the island, or a water park on the other part of the island. The caves just have certain candles here and rail tracks here, and it doesn't feel as distinct. It made me feel like I was walking in circles quite a lot. And unfortunately, because I kept going in circles so much, I was originally thinking maybe I wouldn't finish the DLC, or I'd end up saying negative things about it. But the more I played it, and the more I discovered my own strategy of just try to chop up all the cardboard that you can, because the cardboard doesn't respawn, not even if you reset your game. So therefore, you can use it to blaze a new trail. Once I did that, I was pretty fine. But I started liking the game more and more, especially as the story progressed, and you got to see some character development. Again, it's a very child-friendly game, so don't expect zero escape levels of plot. But it does have a surprisingly touching ending, and I honestly wish that more people would play this game, because in my opinion, it teaches a good lesson about cooperation and how just constantly being bossy and controlling can lead to bad results. And it seems like a lot of people nowadays just don't have a grip on their temper, and so having a more cooperative, calm attitude could really help them out if this game is any indication. It may be a bunch of children playing a game, but it's surprisingly grounded in realism that makes me wonder if it wasn't intentional. Unfortunately, the reason why I wasn't able to capture footage of the proper story scenario is that even if you have a New Game Plus file, you can't just walk into the cave and start things. If you go up to the entrance before you've beaten the game, the cave will be closed off. But if you go through any of the waterfalls that you would otherwise use to get back onto the island, you'll find that the area you're in is so small and so blocked off that you really can't proceed. So the only way you're able to restart this DLC campaign is to beat the game all over again. And I just was not patient enough to do that. And I wish that there was an easier way, or maybe the game would tell you that. Heck, I know there's an entire forum on Steam called How Do I Start the DLC? So I wonder if I hadn't have just happened to be loaded into the playground, if I would have even known what I was doing. I was fortunate enough to be standing right next to Martin and just said, oh, there's an exclamation point above his head. I guess I will go talk to him. I consider that more luck than anything. Overall, In the Dark was just more Lil Gator Game with a couple of new abilities, a brand new area to explore, and a really touching ending. But it still lacked the map system that was my biggest detractor from the original game. But despite my confusion, I still had some good times listening to the dialogue, and the controls were still smooth and for the most part responsive. A couple of times it didn't register when I wanted to pull out the shirt paraglider, but apart from that, it was a lot of fun to zoom around the cave with my new abilities. Now this DLC normally costs about $13, and I got it on sale for a little under $10, and thanks to the gift cards that my family got me for Christmas, I was able to download it for free. Now there is a physical version of this that costs $30, and it includes both the main game and the DLC, which if I'm doing the math correctly, that's actually a better deal than you would get if you bought the DLC separately. If you're more of a digital person, you can also purchase the Lil Gator Game Gator of the Year bundle on the eShop. But I do think that the DLC is reasonably priced for this kind of game and this kind of length, as even though it's advertised as the same length as the main game, I was able to beat the DLC in just a few hours. So it's not like Breath of the Wild style massive, but it is long enough that I could hypothetically see this being marketed as a sequel more than it is a DLC, even if it doesn't really bring that much new to the formula. So if you don't mind getting lost and having to forge your own way through the game, I strongly recommend it. But if you were really turned off by the original game's lack of guidance and hand-holding, then you're probably not going to like this. But if you can tolerate some samey looking hallways, then I think you're in for a great time. Just don't expect as many blatant Zelda references as before, and I think you'll be good to go. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends. Let me know down in the comments if I was unclear on anything, and I will try my best to answer your questions. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!